Hello everyone, my name is Jen, and today, thanks to all the positive reception on the last part, today is part 2 of Dead by Daylight Killer Lore, and today's focal point will be the most sadistic killer, and don't worry, I'll not make you wait till the end to find out who that is. I'm not going to be that much of an asshole. Now, without further ado, let's get into this. Number 1. The Legion. It's difficult to exactly figure out what the Legion's lore is, as it's convoluted and barely elaborated on. However, I will bring up everything I could find from in-game, from trailers, and from flavor texts, and also the tomes, so let's get into it. It all pretty much started with Frank, who was your stereotypical high school rebel with family problems, and you know what? I can relate, bro. Anyhow, he caught the attention of a girl, Julie, who equally despised the small-town lifestyle in Ormond, and from then on would regularly hang out with him at parties, where he came in contact with the impulsive Joey and the kind of shy baddie Susie. Sensing familiarity within each other, they spend more and more time together and at an abandoned shack. English is very difficult, which is also where their mixtape and interest in music came from. A harmless interest in music, however, turned into vandalism, robberies, and arson due to Frank's will to spice things up just a little bit. One fateful night, Joey dared Frank to vandalize a store that he had recently been fired from. And, expecting the place to be empty, he agreed. However, a single cleaner was still present, and that is when a dark urge rose within Frank as he stabbed the cleaner. He then ordered the others to finish the job, which they all gladly did except for Susie. She was apprehensive at first, but was eventually convinced by a friendly shout in her ear. They rushed to clean up the crime scene and dig a grave for the body, but they got distracted by a sound off in the distance. Frank went in to investigate, and the others followed faithfully behind him. It is then that they were lured into a black fog, into the entity's realm. Also, the entity made a mixtape for them. I thought I should mention that because that is very important. For those who didn't know, it's actually the Fuming mixtape. Let me play it real quick. I didn't know the entity was chill like that. Anyway, moving on. Ah yes, Dead by Daylight's most sadistic killer. See, it's second place, not like the last one, like last time, Yeah, it's Doctor, also known as Herman Carter, or Hermann. I'm just going to assume he's German. I'm German, I'm going to assume everyone is German. Anyway, Herman Carter is by far the most sadistic killer in Dead by Daylight. Yes, above Singularity, Wesker, and Vecna. At a young age, Herman was intrigued by human psychology and actually became quite a master at it at a surprisingly early point in his life. He was described as a child prodigy, and less than a year after high school, joined Yale's Advanced Neuroscience program, which in truth was run by the CIA because, of course. Herman, alongside a few other top students, or I'll call them recruits, were transferred into a secret black site facility hidden from prying eyes, known as Larry's Memorial Institute, aka the most annoying map on Dead by Daylight. Anyway, Herman was taught by Dr. Otto Stamper, who provided him with any equipment he could need for his extracting of information, which in truth was their number one priority given by the CIA. Dr. Stamper reminded Herman a multitude of times that he could be as grotesque and callous in his methods as he wished, as this wasn't an ordinary institute, and unfortunately for Stamper, Herman took this way too seriously. Years passed, and he was never questioned for his methods, or what exactly happened to prisoners after he extracted any information from them. But the true scope of his sadism was revealed when the CIA received no contact from the Institute for a week and went to investigate. Prisoners, workers, and Dr. Stamper himself were tortured and killed, and Stamper's head was peeled open and different electrical circuits were planted into his brain. But Herman himself was missing. He was nowhere to be seen. In truth, he was in the entity's clutches, killing for the entity, and in return was given things to experiment with. And by things, I mean survivors and some killers, but I'm not going to spoil that for you yet. That will come back later in another video. He essentially experiments on survivors and sometimes other killers for his own sick enjoyment. This time he doesn't need anything in return. You see, with Vecna, he believes it's for the greater good. Similarly with Singularity and Wesker, they believe it's for the greater good. But Doctor does it because he can, because he wants to, because he's bored and it's fun to him. He tortures people and shocks their literal brains out, and he doesn't bat an eye. Not that he can blink anyway, but whatever. You thought I didn't have enough lore for Legion? Well, here comes Trapper, or Evan McMillan. Well, he barely has any fucking lore, and what little lore we do have is convoluted, but you know what? I can make it work, right? Let me work my magic here. So, Evan essentially had daddy issues, relatable. He just wanted to make his pop proud, but his father was a sadistic freak and also quite abusive. He demanded a ridiculous amount of work from his workers and even his son himself. And this cycle of abuse was torture for Evan and his father's own mental health. When his father finally snapped, he became part of a large mass murder at the Macmillan estate, the workers all being killed by the father and son duo. From here, any lore is blurry and little is confirmed. However, it's suspected that Evan was chosen by the entity due to being more vulnerable than his father, more pliable. From the Dead by Daylight mobile trailer, we can even see that Evan, in the beginning at least, wasn't willing to serve the entity, but was belittled, tortured, and literally hooked into killing for it, but perhaps grew to appreciate the entity after being given a sense of purpose. It isn't exactly known, but rather speculated, due to his fragile mental state and proven submissive personality. He used to work for his father, you know, he wanted to make his father proud. And who knows, that might extend to the entity as well. In conclusion, he just needs a hook, and someone to take those hooks out of his shoulders. God, I wish Pig had her own Dead by Daylight music. Anyway, before we can discuss copyright, I can't go into Amanda's entire backstory. I'm not gonna ruin the Saw films for you if you haven't seen them. Trust me, they're worth watching. Just do it. But I will summarize it here for you, so major fucking spoilers. clear my throat. Amanda Young was a young drug addict who caught the attention of John Kramer, who put her into a trap known as the Reverse Bear Trap. She survived and became an apprentice of his, aiding him in future traps, like the bathroom trap in Saw 1. However, her traps were unbeatable, and she seemed to be handling her job a little too loosely, as if she didn't take it seriously. Well, not the job itself, but the lives that it was costing. Which, John Kramer, he was not fond of this. In Saw 3, she had a final test. Her job was to simply not shoot a wife of a man, which she failed. The reason? Another of John's apprentices, Hoffman, knew that Amanda's previous boyfriend was the one who unintentionally killed John Kramer's unborn child due to Amanda needing a fix. He threatened to tell John the truth if she didn't shoot the woman, so she was between a rock and a hard place. When she shot the wife, her husband, who had just finished most of his trial, entered and returned the favor, shooting her in the throat. John revealed that this was her final test, and that she failed, but he didn't know why she failed. Amanda watched John as darkness overcame her vision, and she found herself in the entity's realm. She was so brainwashed and convinced that this was a second chance from John himself, that it was part of his plan, so she carries on his work in the entity's realm, testing the survivors' survival instincts every single trial. the good guy, or, well, the not so fucking good guy, Charles Lee Ray, Chucky, the serial swearer, the doll with so many voice lines in Dead by Daylight, it's actually ridiculous, but I love behavior for this. Yeah, that one. Let's just get into his lore, right? I don't think I need to reiterate everything. I'm quite sure most people have seen Child's Play, but I'll skim over it very quickly. Why did I just pause like that? Before the doll was a serial swearer and killer, he was a serial killer known as Charles Lee Ray, who, together with his baddie-ass girlfriend, Tiffany, was a little too fond of killing people. You know, that's kinda not legal. When he was confronted by the police and killed, he transferred his soul into a good guy doll, which was given to the protagonist of Child's Play, Andy. He wanted to transfer himself into a human body once more to continue his killings, so conveniently he chose Andy and lured him into a factory. Andy's sister, however, Kylie, was more perceptive and followed behind. Chucky had prepared the ritual but was interrupted by Kylie, allowing Andy to escape, shouting profanities like he always does. The good little doll followed after Andy into a thick black fog, entering the entity's realm, where he could reunite with Tiffany, who was by now also a psychotic doll that you would probably find on your granny's shelf, and together they lived happily ever after, killing grown-up survivors. Yo. Honestly, please give me some credit here. I tried to make it quick.